"I'm in a conference, sweetheart. I'll call you back tonight." That's what he said, and at that exact moment, I was sitting in my car in the parking garage of the Meridian Hotel in downtown Atlanta, watching his silver Audi pull into spot B14. He wasn't alone. I didn't move. I don't even think I breathed. I just watched her step out of the passenger side, heels, a wrap dress, hair freshly blown out, and I watched my husband of 6 years come around to her side and put his hand on the small of her back like it was the most natural thing in the world, like he'd done it 1,000 times. Maybe he had. My phone was still in my hand. The call had ended 30 seconds ago. I looked at the screen, his contact photo, a picture from our vacation in Savannah 2 years back, him grinning at the camera with his arm around me. I set the phone face down on the passenger seat and just sat there. I want to tell you I cried. I want to say I fell apart right there in that parking garage and let myself feel the full weight of it all at once. But I didn't. Something strange happened instead. Everything went very quiet inside me, the way it goes quiet just before a storm when even the birds stop. And I started thinking clearly, more clearly than I had in months. His name was Adrian. We met when I was 26 at a work event I almost didn't go to. He was charming in that easy, unhurried way that takes you off guard. The kind of man who makes you feel like the most interesting person in the room. We dated for 2 years, got engaged, got married at a vineyard outside Dahlonega with 60 people and a string quartet and my grandmother crying in the front row. I'm 32 now. I work in corporate finance, auditing, specifically. Which is relevant, it turns out. He's a sales director at a logistics company, travels a lot, or says he does. I should back up. The first time I noticed something was off wasn't dramatic. It was a Tuesday in February. I came home early because a meeting got canceled and I wanted to surprise him with dinner. He was working from home that day, supposedly on calls all afternoon. When I walked in, he was in the kitchen, laughing at something on his phone. The laugh cut off the second he saw me. He put the phone in his pocket and said, "Hey, you're early," and kissed me on the cheek. That was it. That was the whole moment. But I know his laugh. I've known his laugh for 6 years. And that was not his work laugh or his buddy laugh or his watching a stupid video laugh. That was something else. I told myself I was being paranoid. I made dinner. We ate. I watched him be perfectly normal all evening and I decided I was imagining things. But I started paying attention after that. Not in a crazy way. I wasn't going through his phone or hiring anyone. I just started noticing. The way he angled his phone away when I walked into a room. The way he'd started showering as soon as he got home from work trips instead of flopping on the couch for an hour like he used to. Small things. The kind of things that don't mean anything on their own but add up like water in a basement. March came. He started having quarterly review season, which meant extra nights at the office, extra weekend calls, extra everything. I work in finance. I know what quarter end looks like. I also know that logistics companies don't typically run major quarterly reviews in mid-March. I checked our joint credit card statement online one Thursday evening while he was supposedly on a call in the home office. I wasn't even looking for anything specific. I was checking on a charge I thought might be a subscription we'd forgotten about, and there it was. Meridian Hotel, downtown Atlanta, $312. 12 days ago on a Wednesday, the same Wednesday he'd texted me that he was stuck at a client dinner and would be home late. I sat with that for a long time. Then I scrolled back 3 months, 4 more charges, same hotel, different dates. Always on nights he'd told me he was working late or at a client event. I closed the laptop. I went to bed before he finished his call. I lay in the dark and I thought about my grandmother who spent 40 years married to a man who treated her beautifully. And I thought about what she told me at my wedding. You deserve a man who comes home like he means it. I thought about that a lot over the next few weeks. I didn't confront him. Not yet. I know myself well enough to know that if I said something before I knew the full picture, I'd lose the high ground and he'd have time to cover his tracks. I'd seen that happen to a colleague. She confronted her husband the moment she found a text. He deleted everything, denied everything, and she spent 6 months trying to prove something she'd already seen with her own eyes. I wasn't going to do that. I called my sister instead. Not to cry, well, maybe a little to cry, but because she's a paralegal and I needed to think through next steps with someone who understood what I was about to need. She was quiet for a long time after I told her. Then she said, "Okay, don't touch anything, don't say a word to him. Call James Whitmore's office tomorrow morning." James Whitmore is a divorce attorney in Buckhead. He's the kind of attorney that people on Adrian's side of the income bracket use, which is exactly why I called him instead of someone else. If this was going where I thought it was going, I wasn't going to walk in underprepared. I met with him on a Friday afternoon, told him I had reason to believe my husband was having an affair, and that I wanted to understand my options in full before I did anything else. He walked me through Georgia's divorce laws, equitable distribution, what counted as marital assets, what documentation I'd need. He also recommended I work with a forensic accountant, his words, not mine, because in cases where one spouse controls a significant portion of the marital finances, it's not unusual to find things that have been quietly shifted around. Adrian controlled our investments. I'm Robert Sinclair, 67 years old, and I'm Robert Sinclair, 67, a rental property we bought together in 2022. He was the one who met with our financial advisor. I'd always trusted him with that because he was better with it, or so I thought. The forensic accountant's name was Gerald. He was a soft-spoken man in his 60s who wore reading glasses on a chain around his neck and spoke about hidden assets the way a librarian talks about misplaced books. Matter of fact, unsurprised, methodical. What Gerald found over the next 6 weeks made the affair look like a footnote, $82,000 that had been moved from our joint brokerage account into an individual account under Adrian's name alone over the past 18 months. Small amounts each time. 4,000 here, 6,000 there. Slow enough that it wouldn't trigger alerts. Slow enough that I wouldn't notice on a casual glance. The rental property had been refinanced 9 months ago. I was listed on the deed, but the refinance paperwork had my signature on it in a way that Gerald said deserved a closer look. My own signature. On paperwork I had no memory of signing. I sat in Gerald's office and looked at that document for a long time. "Do you want to know what I think?" Gerald said, folding his glasses up. "Yes," I said. "I think someone was planning for a particular future and making sure they arrived at it with as much of the luggage as possible." I thanked him, took the copies he'd made, and drove home. Adrian wasn't there. He was at the gym, or so he said. I walked through our house slowly, the kitchen where I'd made us coffee every morning for 6 years, the living room we'd argued about how to furnish, the home office with his name on a monogrammed leather portfolio on the desk, a gift from my parents for our 4th anniversary. I wasn't sad. I was past sad. I was somewhere on the other side of it, in a place I didn't have a word for yet. I called James Whitmore's office and told him to move forward. It took another 3 weeks to have everything in order. During that time, I went to work every morning, came home every evening, made dinner twice a week, watched television with my husband on the couch, and told him I loved him when we went to bed. I know how that sounds, but here's what I've come to understand about survival. Sometimes you have to hold 2 realities at once, the one everyone can see, and the one you're building quietly in the background. Adrian had been doing that to me for, based on what Gerald found, at least 18 months. The only difference was that my version wasn't going to hurt anyone who didn't deserve it. He told me he had a conference in Atlanta that Thursday night. "Logistics Industry Summit," he said. "It's a big one. I might not make it back until Friday afternoon." "Okay," I said. "Text me when you get there." He kissed me and said he would. He texted me at 2:14 p.m. at the hotel. "Crazy busy. Call you tonight." At 2:29 p.m., I had watched him pull into spot B14 of the Meridian Hotel parking garage and walk inside with his hand on a woman's back. I had followed him at a distance. I knew the hotel. I knew that the front desk had a package waiting for him under his name. I had arranged that. I sat in my car for 40 minutes. I breathed. I thought about my grandmother. I thought about Gerald's soft voice saying someone was planning for a particular future. I thought about 18 months of Sunday mornings where I passed him coffee and he said, "Thanks, babe," and looked at his phone. Then I went inside. The lobby of the Meridian is all marble and warm light, the kind of hotel designed to feel like a reward. The front desk clerk smiled when I approached. I gave him my name, not Adrian's. The package was there. A hotel envelope, thick with paper, sealed. Actually, I said, I need to get this to my husband. Could you have it sent to his room? He looked it up. Room 422. I thanked him and walked back outside to my car. I had one more call to make. My sister answered on the first ring. It's done, I said. Tell James to file Monday. He called me at 9:47 that night. I was already in bed, already asleep. Or at least that's what I let go to voicemail. He came home the next day at noon. I was in the kitchen. He came in looking the way he always looked after a trip, a little tired, rolling his suitcase behind him, hair slightly compressed from the drive. He said, "Hey, conference ran long. You eat?" I said, "There's leftover pasta in the fridge." He put his suitcase in the front hall and came into the kitchen. He looked at me. Then he looked again, the way you look at something twice when it's slightly different from how you expected it. "You okay?" he said. "I'm fine," I said. He opened the fridge. He took out the pasta. He put it in the microwave. And then he said, "I got a weird envelope at the front desk. Some kind of legal thing. I didn't really look at it." He said it carefully, the way people say things they've been rehearsing. "You should probably read it," I said. He looked at me again. This time he didn't look away. The microwave beeped. Neither of us moved. "What is that?" he said. "Quiet now." "Divorce filing," I said. "James Whitmore's office. Everything's there. The grounds, the asset documentation, the refinance paperwork from last September." Gerald was very thorough. He set down the container of pasta. His hands, I noticed, were not entirely steady. "Rachel," he started, "that's my name?" Rachel. And hearing it come out of his mouth right then in that particular tone, apologetic and desperate and already bargaining, I felt something click closed somewhere inside me. "I was at the Meridian on Thursday," I said. "I saw you park. I saw you walk in. I had the paperwork waiting at the front desk." He didn't say anything for a long moment. The refrigerator hummed. Somewhere outside, a dog barked. "How long?" I asked. He looked at the counter. 14 months. 14 months. Our 5th anniversary had been 11 months ago. We'd gone to Charleston for the weekend. He'd given me a gold bracelet engraved with the coordinates of the vineyard where we got married. I was wearing that bracelet. I looked at it. Then I slid it off and set it on the counter between us. "I don't want to hear an explanation," I said. "I've had 6 weeks to imagine every version of one, and none of them matter. James's office will be in touch with your attorney about next steps. You can stay at your brother's until we figure out the house." "Rachel, just let me. I saw you," I said. "I saw you, and then I went home and I went to work and I sat across from you at dinner, and I got all of it in order. So please don't tell me you didn't mean for this to happen, or that you don't know what you want, or that we can fix it. We can't fix it. I already know what I want." He looked at me for a long time. I don't know what he was looking for. Some version of me that was going to fall apart, maybe. Some window. There wasn't one. He picked up his suitcase. He went upstairs. I heard him moving around up there for about an hour. Then I heard him come back down and the front door close and his car back out of the driveway. I stayed at the kitchen counter for a while after that. I made myself tea. I stood at the window and watched the neighbor's cat walk along the fence in the late afternoon light. I thought about what Gerald had said. Someone planning for a particular future. The thing about planning for the future is that anyone can do it. I just happened to plan for the same one. The divorce was finalized 4.5 months later. Gerald's documentation held up. The $82,000 came back into a jointly managed account and was divided equitably. The rental property was sold. The refinance paperwork was flagged. Adrian's attorney didn't push it, which told me everything I needed to know about how confident they were in his position. I kept the house. That was the thing I wanted most, actually. Not out of sentiment, I was past sentiment, but because I'd chosen it, I'd painted the living room, I'd planted the garden in the backyard, and I was not going to let him take that from me on top of everything else. I know what happened with the woman from the Meridian. I don't particularly want to know. I hope she's somewhere figuring out who she's dealing with. I think about the version of myself who almost didn't look twice at that credit card statement. The version who might have swallowed the unease and kept making coffee and tried not to see what was right in front of her. That version existed. She was real. She was me for a while. And I feel for her. But she started paying attention. That's what mattered. I'm not going to tell you I came out of this fine, because fine is a word people use when they don't want to go into it. I came out of it changed. I came out of it knowing things about myself, about my own capacity for patience and clarity and strategic thinking under the worst circumstances of my life, that I didn't know before. I came out of it knowing that I will never again mistake someone's comfort with my trust. I'm Robert Sinclair, 67 years old, and I'm Robert Sinclair, 67 years old, and I'm Robert Sinclair, 67 years old, and because I sat in a parking garage in downtown Atlanta and watched the truth walk right past me, and instead of looking away, I started counting. He didn't intend for it to end the way it did, but he intended for it to end. The difference is that he thought he got to decide when. He thought he could keep both realities running until he was ready to choose, until the money was moved, until the timing was right, until he could exit on his own terms with his hands clean. What he didn't account for was that I am very, very good at reading financial documents, and I had already been planning for a while. People always want to know if there was a single moment that changed everything, like there's supposed to be one clean break, one dramatic scene where the truth arrives like lightning and you know exactly what to do next. That's not how it happened for me. It was quieter than that. It was a laugh I didn't recognize, a credit card statement I almost didn't open, a feeling I tried very hard to talk myself out of for weeks. The thing about living with deception is that it doesn't announce itself. Adrian didn't change overnight. He was still the same man who refilled my coffee without being asked, still the same man who remembered my mother's birthday. He just also happened to be moving our money into his own accounts while I slept. He happened to be planning a future that didn't include me, carefully, methodically, in small enough increments that I wouldn't notice until it was too late. Except I did notice, not because I'm exceptional, because I paid attention when something felt wrong instead of convincing myself to look away. I think that's the part that matters most, and the part that's hardest to talk about honestly. It's easy to look back now and frame it as strength, but in the moment, paying attention felt like grief. Every time I pulled another statement, every time Gerald showed me another transfer, I wasn't thinking about how prepared I was. I was thinking about Savannah. I was thinking about the vineyard. I was thinking about 6 years of mornings that I now had to recontextualize entirely. That's the real cost of someone else's choices, not the money. Gerald helped me get that back. Not even the marriage. It's the retroactive erosion of your own memory. You go back through things that felt real and you have to figure out what actually was. What I came to understand, somewhere in those 6 weeks of building my case while still handing him coffee every morning, is that integrity isn't something that protects you from pain. It's something that keeps you clear-headed inside of it. I could have blown everything up the moment I found that first hotel charge. I could have confronted him in the driveway and said everything I felt and lost every advantage I had. Instead, I called my sister. I called James. I called Gerald. I kept my hand steady and my voice even, and I did the next right thing, then the next one, then the next. Not because I wasn't devastated, because I understood that falling apart on his timeline would only serve him. Adrian made his choices over 18 months, slowly, deliberately, with full knowledge of what he was doing. And the consequence of those choices was not something that happened to him suddenly. It was something that had been accumulating the entire time, the way his actions had been accumulating. He stood in our kitchen with unsteady hands and a face that had finally run out of story. And whatever he felt in that moment was simply the weight of everything he had set in motion catching up with him at once. I kept the house, I kept my name. I kept the garden I'd planted in the backyard and the living room I'd painted twice, trying to get the color right. What I learned, what I actually carry with me now, is that your own mind is your most important resource. Sharpen it. Trust it. When it tells you something is wrong, don't negotiate with the part of yourself that wants to believe otherwise. And when things fall apart anyway, because sometimes they do even when you've done nothing wrong, Know that clarity is something you can choose to build, one careful step at a time, even in the middle of the worst season of your life. That's what I did, and it was enough.